Good day. If the American presidential elections, whenever they hold, if there was a way to allow Africans to participate in those elections, you'll be very surprised at how they vote or how they will vote. In recent times, two of America's previous presidents, and even one now that is sitting, have had a great influence in Africa. One being Barack Obama, because he has roots to Africa, Kenya specifically. His father, Barack Obama Sr., schooled in Harvard and in Hawaii, and that was where he met the mother of Barack Obama. So Barack Obama has strong roots in Kenya, and when eventually he was elected in 2008, Barack Obama was celebrated in Kenya very, very vocally and effusively. But it will surprise you also to note that the sitting American president, President Donald Trump, is also very popular in Africa. It will be a contradiction to a lot of people to know that he is popular in Africa because what had happened is that he has had a number of policies that seem to make people think that he is not popular in Africa, he is not regarded in Africa. But believe it or not, when the election of 2020 was being held, there was a lot of churches in countries across Africa, especially in Nigeria, I remember, who had celebrations and who had crusades and who had all these things marching for Donald Trump. Donald Trump is phenomenally popular in Africa. It is beyond belief. So this is why I decided to make this video. Between Donald Trump and Barack Obama, who is more popular in Africa? I have my own opinion, but I will also wish to get your opinion at the end of this video. Good day and welcome to Ebimo Amungo's perspective on global affairs. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe. If you have any ideas and any comments regarding the view I express, please leave them in the comment section. Africa doesn't figure much in America's reality. We are small in geopolitics as a continent, and we really do well when Africa is left alone. Africa has done very well in being left alone, but unfortunately, there was one American presidency that was involved in Africa. And in my own estimation, that presidency brought a lot of good, but more harm to Africa. And what would that presidency be? That's the presidency of Barack Obama. Barack Obama is the American president that has African heritage and because of that heritage, he had more involvement with the continent. He felt he needed to do more for the continent. And so for that reason, the American presidency, for the very first time in a long time, got involved in Africa. But how did the presidency of Barack Obama impact on Africa? I'll tell you. Barack Obama was very good in making speeches. He was very good. He rallied African youths in the University of Cairo. He also gave a powerful speech at the early part of his presidency in the African Union, and he was good at making speeches. And among those speeches, besides making speeches, he was also very good in promoting ideals. One of the big ideals he promoted was the Power Africa Project, Young Leaders of Africa Project. His was one that had so many ideals. But ultimately, Barack Obama, if you ask me, was a disaster for Africa. Why do I say this? You see, Barack Obama felt that he needed to get involved in the affairs of Africa, and for that reason, when there was a demonstration that was quelled in Libya, he felt that he should intervene on behalf of the people. So he orchestrated a bombing campaign against Colonel Muammar Gaddafi with the idealistic hope of trying to help the people of Libya. They bombed Libya relentlessly destroyed old structures and political structures and created a reality in Africa that still haunts Africa till this day. That reality was that when the Gaddafi government was overthrown, there was a lot of brigandage within the Libyan community there. And one of the things that happened in Libya was Gaddafi had amassed huge amounts of weaponry from the old Soviet Union, Soviet arms, and that weaponry got into the hands of so many people that we can account for now, mainly. So what now happened was that groups that were not heard of and were just militant groups that were just at the background and got armed with very potent weapons. We started hearing of Al-Qaeda in North Africa, Boko Haram, and militant groups that have ravaged the whole of Africa. The whole of West Africa have been impacted by that singular bombing and overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi. That's one of the legacies of Obama left for Africa. And that's simply because he was involved in Africa. He liked it. He makes speeches. And this is what has come out of it. Several years, a decade down the road, because that bombing was carried out over 10 years ago, the countries of the Sahel region have all lost their democracy because it was thought that that militancy and that insurgency that came out of that region was not being addressed very well, but first by the colonial masters who had the mandate to protect Africa, those countries that they were overseeing. That was the French military that had bases all over the Sahel countries of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger Republic. Those countries were eventually had their democracies overturned and upturned when the military took over because they felt that the civilian government were not effective. One other country that has been impacted and still impacted very much from that action of Barack Obama is Nigeria. Boko Haram, a militant group who gained notoriety for the Chibok girls kidnapping during the presidency of Goodluck Jonathan, have continued over the course of 10 years to run havoc and ravage, and they've ravaged the northern part of Nigeria, northeastern part of Nigeria, to the extent that it is unrecognizable anymore. Government has not been able to cope in dealing with that reality. Chad also has had their own insurgency, all from arms that came out of the overthrow of Libya. Meanwhile, Libya itself has been a dysfunctional state, a rum state. They have not been able to get their act together. There's a man in Benghazi called General Haftar. He controls that whole part of it. They are divided, and then they have the ruling part of Libya in Tripoli. They are not so strong, but they are supported by Turkey and some other countries, so they have the mandate. But General Haftar is supported by America and Russia and quite a lot of people, but the Turks have managed to hold them off. So this country is almost divided now. This is just one of the legacies of the Obama presidency. Another legacy also happened in Uganda. Uganda had the temerity to go and enact an anti-gay act, anti-homosexual acting, and that brought the full brunt of Obama on them. They were sanctioned and they were denied access to AGOA. They were denied access to so many things because one of the things that Obama presidency did in a very conservative continent like Africa, where they have significant Muslim population and significant ultra-Christian population, fundamentalist Christian population, I may say, was that he promoted LGBT acts. And those LGBT acts, he promoted them very forcefully, and Africans weren't receiving it. They didn't like it. They didn't want it. And it even influenced things like the churches in Nigeria. The Church of the Church of England also had situations where they were fighting against the LGBT imposition of LGBT into the church system. That is the kind of policy we recognize with Obama. Obama went ahead and also bombed the El Shabaab in Somalia. And one of the main things that caused a big fracturing in the North African not Africa, was the Arab Spring. Under Obama's presidency, the Arab Spring sprang up with the hope that all those speeches and all those things can bring a new dawn for the Arabs. So in Tunisia, there, the Arab Spring started when one frustrated bread seller put out his frustration, and there was spontaneous demonstration that led to the sweeping of governments all across most of the Arab states. There was demonstrations in Algeria that was quelled. There was demonstrations in Morocco that was also quelled. So there was political instability, but one place that repeated demonstrations in Tariq Square eventually led to the overthrow of Mubarak was in Egypt. But it was very ironic that when the demonstrations and all the dust cleared, it was a Muslim Brotherhood, a very ultra conservative power group that took power, and that didn't serve the interest of America, neither did it serve the interest of Israel very well. And it wasn't long that the Muslim Brotherhood, under a president called Morsi, was crushed, and President Sisi came back to power. So there was a lot of disruptions in Africa under the Obama legacy. It's not popular because, if nothing else, that singular act of pushing LGBT programs across Africa was not well received. And there's actually no legacy program that Obama left behind that we can really look at, despite his Power Africa projects, his Young African, very rhetoric and very idealistic projects. Many of them didn't survive, even in the ones that tried to promote healthcare. On the converse side now, let's look at Donald Trump. There were rallies for Donald Trump in cities like Lagos, Abuja, across Nigeria. It was incredible in the 2020 elections. Why is Donald Trump so popular in Africa, you would think? Because this is one man who has said repeatedly, he called Africa a very exotic name. And you would think that because of that, people don't like him. But this is what you will find. Donald Trump is conservative. That same conservative mandate that made him popular among the Bible Belt countries in states in America, the southern states, is the same thing that made him popular in Africa. He stood against things that undermine the family structure, and he definitely stood against things like transgender and LGBT. That singular promotion of conservative ideals was one of the reasons, or is one of the reasons, that Donald Trump is very popular here. But let's not also forget that Donald Trump says America first. He concentrates on America. And one of the greatest things he does for Africa is that he never remembers Africa. In fact, he doesn't even want any engagement with Africa. Africans like it that way. Africans do very well when American presidents don't come bearing down on them and giving them prescriptions of policy and ideals that ultimately run at variance with their own cultural, ethnic, and geopolitical and geosocial social norms. They don't like it when you come and tell them LGBT is the way they should go, or that they should do this and do that. Because this is what normally happens when we have an American president that is very involved in Africa. They come with neoliberal ideas. They tell you that you should privatize your industries, you should adopt models of democracy. They don't put into consideration social and political realities. And that is why experiments as they imposed in countries like Iraq and Afghanistan just didn't hold. The reality is that Africa too also has its own peculiar traits, and not understanding these peculiar traits and bringing up one particular prescriptive measure towards saving Africa always ends up harming Africa. That's what has happened. And that's why if you ask many Africans, they will rather not take things like IMF loans. They will rather not take things like World Bank loans. They come with conditionalities that are just not palatable to the African political reality. So one thing Trump does very well that Africans love a lot is that Trump just doesn't bother about Africa. He lets Africa be. So Africans like him for that. It's very ironic when you say that Trump is almost more popular than Obama in Africa. I think so. I may be wrong. Many people remember Obama as a great speech maker who swayed the world, and even before he became became president, or just on the verge of being inaugurated as president, the Nobel Committee had given him a Nobel Peace Prize. He went ahead and ultimately created the reality we see today in the world. That Arab Spring was very destructive to the democracies of the world. It harmed Syria beyond belief. Syria has reeled for over several years, even since the Obama presidency, and any semblance of stability to Syria just only happened recently when the Assad government was chased out. So there's a lot of difference between idealistic realities, and then idealistic thought processes and behaviors and speeches than reality itself. So this is how I see it. Between Obama and Donald Trump, who would win an election if Africans had a right to vote? Looking behind with hindsight now, I think that it may just be that Trump will beat Obama, even in Africa. I may be wrong. And if you think otherwise, and you think that Obama can do better than Donald Trump in Africa, or he was popular more than Donald Trump in Africa, or he had left a bigger legacy and is more respectful, or his presidency was more beneficial to Africa than that of Donald Trump, you can leave that in the comment section. But before I leave, let me put one last reality I just remembered. Donald Trump actually initiated a $60 billion aid program for Africa. It was specific to developing countries. I think most of it was supposed to be for Africa. But now that he has come back in his 47th presidency, he has unfortunately swept aside the US aid that was to implement that program. I forget the name of the program, but it was $60 billion, and it was supposed to be implemented to counter the investments of China in America. That I don't know the state of that particular program. I will do a little research and find out. But he did do something that had money to it, because the president called Donald Trump is very transactional. He likes to get something in return. And we just saw that when he just did a peace deal for Congo Democratic Republic. And the peace deal is supposed to give him access to Congo's rich resources that includes gold, lithium, coltron, cobalt, and other rare earth metals, so they don't have to go getting those metals from China. These are the realities about the Trump presidency that makes me feel that he, and not Obama, may just be more popular in Africa than if there were supposed to be an election. I think he's more popular. That's my own opinion. You can leave your own opinion in the comment section. And this is where I end my video for today. Thanks for watching. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe. If you have any comments, please leave them in the comment section, and like and share. Thank you very much.